In our work, we've seen even the best teams struggle to keep their security baselines up to date with the relentless pace of change. New apps, new users, new threats, every day. Small gaps appear not as a result of neglect, sometimes they're just a byproduct of trying to keep up. But what if the difference between a breach and business as usual is just a single missing security setting? Welcome to the Collective Podcast, the podcast where we delve into the ever-evolving world of corporate security to help businesses stay ahead of the curve, whether you're a small startup or a global enterprise. I'm your host, Jordy Decock, working for the Collective, where we pride ourselves on a hands-on approach, working closely with our clients to cut through the noise and deliver the solutions they actually need. No unnecessary fluff, no overselling. Each episode, I'll be joined by experts, practitioners, and thought leaders diving into today's most pressing security challenges. We're here to provide insights, strategies, and actionable advice to keep your organization safe and secure in a digital-first world. Joining me today are Thor Nicolaï.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And Jasper Baes.
Hi everyone.
Both security consultants at the Collective. Together, we'll explore why gaps appear, what makes them so hard to close, and how a service around security baselines can help organizations stay ahead. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the challenge of keeping your security posture strong in a world that never stops changing, this one's for you. Let's start at the beginning, Jasper. What exactly is a security baseline?
A security baseline is essentially a set of recommended configurations and settings that define what is secure or what security looks like in a given environment. It's like a benchmark. And without the benchmark, you're literally flying blind. And especially in the fast evolving environments like Microsoft Cloud, with all of its different services and products. And in my opinion, there should be one security baseline for each workload or product. So Defender, Intune, Entra. And that one version should be the most secure setup possible. And of course, organizations can deviate and will deviate from this, but it should be secure by default. That's the starting point. And the challenge is keeping up with that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the heart of the problem. Change is constant, and definitely in security posture management. Microsoft alone is pushing out hundreds, maybe thousands of updates every year across all of the different cloud services. So adding to that human factor of your IT admins making quick changes and quick fixes, or even just someone enabling a feature without fully understanding the impact. And suddenly your secure environment isn't so secure anymore. So the scary part of all, most organizations don't even notice until something breaks, or worse, until there's a security incident.
Yep.
So that's why automation, continuous visibility are so critical. And you can't rely on a one-time setup or one-time assessment. You need a living, breathing process that adopts as your environment evolves.
Yeah, I think that's really something important you touched there. Security is not something static, but it moves every single day. I think there's a lot of underestimations in the business on how quickly things drift through normal operations. So are there any real-life examples out there, Jasper?
Funny question. Sure. So we had a customer who thought or assumed they were secure, which is, by the way, a bold statement. But until we ran a security baseline assessment, it turned out that a lot of misconfigured settings were in their Entra ID and other services, and it left them exposed. The attack surface was huge. And these were really basic things, like having multi-factor authentication for the employees, having DMARC set up correctly, blocking legacy authentication, or even blocking devices without a compliance policy in Intune. And the customer, they had no ID because the IT team and the employees, everything worked just fine for them. And they were not questioning anything. But with a baseline assessment, we caught it early and it could be fixed fast.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely certain to what customers experience in today's business and real life experiences. So, and here compliance is like a big driver. Whether you're aiming for ISO 27001, preparing for NIS2, or just following your own internal governance, a baseline gives you something tangible, a way to measure and prove your security posture, but it's not just about ticking boxes for an audit. It's about having a clear visual representation of where you stand today, where the gaps are, and maybe how you're improving over time. So that's powerful because it turns security from something abstract into something measurable and actionable, and that's what businesses need going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Tracking is really important here because you don't just want to know the non-compliant checks, you need to follow up on everything. And I also want to add to that the compliance standards like ISO or NIST and so on, most of the time they are really general and they're telling you on a high level what to do or what to have when it comes to security. Baselines or benchmarks go deeper and more in detail.
Yeah, for example, the CIS benchmarks?
Yeah, the CIS benchmarks, correct. But those are not always 100% correct. You still need to have a really good understanding of how each CIS benchmark check and each setting before implementing anything that they recommend. We are aware of some recommendations by the CIS benchmarks that look fine at the first glance, but actually make other parts of security or privacy worse. And that's why we cannot follow the existing benchmarks completely all of the time. Also, not every security engineer or IT engineer has the knowledge or the experience. And for them, it should be easier and more clear. Not something they must check manually, but something that is automated, for example.
Isn't that a problem within most organizations? I mean, where security teams who are under pressure just implement as much as possible, which the benchmark recommends, but without the right context, a lot of new problems are created, no?
Yeah, correctly.
So automation and expert guidance sound really critical here. If we talk about continuous assessment, what does that look like in practice?
Well, it means that you're not just checking once a year or every few years. You're constantly evaluating your environment against that security baseline. And I mean like daily or even hourly. And that's what you would call drift monitoring, detecting when something deviates from the desired state.
Yeah, definitely. Monitoring is really the heartbeat of your security posture management. Without it, you're basically blind. So you need to see not just the current state, but the trends, what's changing, and what's drifting from your desired state, right? So, and why is this? And here's a nuance: like not every deviation is a disaster. Some businesses need business operational tasks, and some controls can be restraining. And if you have an exclusion that requires the deviation, then if it's an accepted risk, you can document this, and we can save it for later. Some changes are intentional, some are business driven. So the real challenge is context, knowing whether a change is genuine risk or approved exception. That's where good tooling, processes come in, and the collective. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you end up with alert fatigue and people start ignoring the signals that matter in your security environment.
Well, not every red flag is a real problem, and without good filtering, teams just drown in alerts. That does actually bring me to the exception question. How should organizations think about exceptions in a structured way?
Yeah, that's maybe one of the most important parts, the exception management. And in my opinion, there should be one security baseline for each of the workloads or the Microsoft security products. And this version should be in the most secure setup possible. And of course, organizations can deviate from this. And as Thor said, not every deviation is bad. Some are business justified. You will always have resource limitations like budget, time, and part of the baseline management is allowing an organization to define and to document those exceptions. So they're tracked and they don't trigger any false alarms. And those exceptions can be reviewed periodically, like every year, and they can even be approved by a CISO or management of the company. And it might help to get some additional budget for your security or IT, right?
Yeah, completely true. Well, okay, now that we covered the what and the why, let's talk about the how. How does the collective bring this to life with the managed security baseline service?
Yeah, good question. So we built a managed security baseline service, MSB, that installs and monitors a baseline across the Microsoft environment. So Entra ID, Microsoft 365, Defender XDR, but also Azure, the servers, and of course Intune with its endpoints. So it really covers a large part of the attack surface that most of the organizations have. And one of the benefits of the MSB service is that it includes custom deviations. So it's not a one size fits all, but we start with the security baseline defined by the collective that will throw a lot of non-compliant checks, which is normal. And together with the customer, we evaluate each non-compliant check and we decide, together with the customer, if it's worth implementing or transferring the risk or accepting the risk. Those are the three options you have when you have a security risk. And these accepted risks are then properly documented in the service and they get reviewed periodically, for example, every year.
That's quite broad. So with the collective, we are actually covering identity, collaboration, endpoints, servers, basically the entire Microsoft ecosystem. Thor, maybe you can break down how the service is structured?
Well, the service is split into two parts, drift monitoring that Jasper already mentioned and automated deployment. So drift monitoring itself is like your early warning system. It tells you when something moves away from the baseline, whether that's misconfiguration or a new feature that wasn't accounted for, or maybe a new check that the collective has added to the baseline. Second, you've got automated deployment, or even better, automated remediation eventually, which is where the real efficiency comes in. Instead of sending someone on a manual hunt through dozens of admin portals, you can push secure configurations back into place, like desired state configuration, either automatically for low-risk items or manually when you need that extra layer of approval. It's here about speed, consistency, and reducing human errors.
Yeah, the pushing, the remediating, and the desired state is really powerful. And the goal or the end goal of the managed security baseline service is to offload the heavy lifting for the IT teams and the security teams for organizations. And we do the impact assessment and then we verify the severity specifically for the organization and we provide expert feedback. And on top of that, we keep doing this all the time, continuously, every day of the year. Customers can focus on what matters most for them, and that's, for the main part, delivering their IT and security service to their organization. And we support them, those teams, in getting the visibility, following up on the technical risks, and providing the expert feedback to them.
So we're not just dumping a long list of issues on the customer's desk. It's about walking with them, helping them prioritize, and making it achievable for their IT team or for their entire organization in the long run. I do believe that's a big difference from what traditional security assessments do.
Yeah.
So let's suppose that I'm an IT manager listening to this and I want to get started. What does the onboarding look like?
First of all, you would be a really funny IT manager, Jordy. But onboarding is really easy. That was one of the requirements that we set for ourselves, that it should be easy. And it takes maximum 10 minutes for the customer to onboard the managed security baseline service. So that's quite okay. And in just 3 steps, a guide with 3 steps with accepting the service principles, to allow the MSB service to read the configurations of the Microsoft tenant, and by creating an internal account for each of the MSB operators, the setup is finished for the customer. And once onboarded, we can immediately start monitoring for drifts and optionally apply remediations.
That's surprisingly quick, actually.
Right, and that's exactly what we like about the service ourselves. So in the back, what is happening when you start an onboarding? Well, we started with Maester, which is open source security test automation framework created by multiple Microsoft MVPs and a Microsoft product manager. And basically, since it's open source, other community contributors have added many things on top of that already. What we have done at the collective is we added layers that make it practical for real business use case in our security baseline service. Things like integrated ticketing, so issues don't just sit in a report. Coaching calls, we try to have every month, so IT teams understand why the recommendations are coming up. Business context filtering, so you don't get drowned in all the noise, paired with prioritization that is coming from all the expertise we have in security.
Yeah, exactly. And we also offer tests that are not available in the public master version. And also our recommendations, they're really tailored for the customer's business context. So what the business does, their core activities, the employees, also the company structure, and so on. And with this service, we are following up on new baseline deviations and discussing with the customer how they should implement them.
Yeah, that's exactly what Jasper is saying. We're not just taking from the open source world, we're also contributing back, which means improving new checks and sharing knowledge so the whole community benefits. And hopefully in the future, we can start doing this more as the collective. New features are launching, so we're trying to pick into those as well. As we all know, security is a team sport, and the more we collaborate, the stronger everyone gets.
Yeah, it shows that the collective is not just building a service, but we're actually strengthening the ecosystem as a whole. Can you tell me more about the exception management?
Sure. The customer has the final decision if a risk is mitigated, transferred to, for example, third party or third service, or the risk is accepted. And those decisions are documented in the Managed Security Baseline service. And that's really important because most organizations have no idea if their technical attack service that they're already aware of has accepted risks.
And that is truly what cloud security posture management becomes over time, always the exception management. We cannot stress this enough here and for our clients. Not all security controls will be applicable in your business context, but keeping track of them is most important. So for our Managed Security Baseline service, the exception process kicks off by any of the appointed IT members of the customer requesting an exception in our ITSM, which is currently Jira. This needs to be approved by one of the approvers, which can be a CISO or an IT manager from the customer, but also by an MSB operator from the collective. This makes sure that every decision is well considered and all the risks have been reviewed as well.
After all the risk management or the exception management, can we consider the service still as safe?
Yeah, of course. Part of security is accepting risks. That's one of the core things of doing security. So yeah, it's still safe, but you're more aware of what risks you accepted. And being aware of the risk you accepted can really leverage the things you do with security and can lay out your roadmap to even more improve your security posture.
So basically the exceptions make it so that my team can continue their work without having extra load or issues. But it also makes my environment, because there are exceptions on how I want my environment to be, still safe.
Yeah, and this is also where compliance comes in. If you're trying to reach some type of security compliance in the company, you will also have to be aware of those exceptions. And sometimes if you have an audit, there will be a green check for some controls, but there might be some question marks for other controls. And if you can leverage the exception management from the MSB, you can basically review why the exception was taken and why it has been approved or by whom.
Yeah, okay. That's true. Because auditors don't want to see that you're fully secure. That's impossible. That's not realistic. But they want to see that you're doing security, you're on top of your security and aware of where your risks are, and that you're taking measures for the risks where possible.
Yeah, that brings us to NIS, basically. So, guys, what's a moment that really made you think, yes, this is why we built this?
Oh, I have such a moment. So while I was giving a security workshop on site at a customer, I got a notification on my phone and I got called, because that's the procedure that we have for critical and high-risk incidents. And luckily, we were just going to take a break from the workshop, so I immediately opened the dashboard of the Managed Security Baseline Service and I opened the incident. And the first thing we always do in these cases is checking if the severity is indeed critical or high. And we do this by looking at the metadata of the incident, so that's coming from the scripts, but also checking manually in their tenant or in the documentation that we have together with the customer about their environment. And luckily, the MSB operators, my colleagues, are well aligned. We are well aligned and coordinated. So they were also already checking how the MSB service responded with the automated response feature. In this case, everything was good and clear, and the risk was auto-remediated within seconds. And we were looking at it manually within less than a minute. And in this case, no escalation to the customer was required, but we have cases where we reach out to the IT team of the customer to clarify an incident or ask for additional input from them. And here, it was the IT partner that was changing some settings without approval from the customer or without notifying us. And that was one of the moments where I thought, this is why we built this. And I'm really glad that I'm part of this.
Well, you kind of mentioned it. You cooperated with some of the colleagues from another service. So a lot of organizations already have tools and processes in place, like other services from the collective or other providers out there. But how do we make sure that the managed security baseline is not just another standalone silo, but rather a piece of that bigger puzzle?
Well, in our managed security baseline service, we allow for anyone to participate from our clients, of course. So if you have internal and or external parties that are required to be informed or involved, you can either give them full control to collaborate or just give them the reader rights in the ITSM tooling that contains the ticketing and the exception management. So whenever a client has other managed services from the collective, obviously this integrates perfectly with our managed service for the security baselines, because, for example, when the SOC the SOC service notices a new attack pattern in onboarded organization, we can potentially leverage this as a configuration test in the future for all the managed security baseline service clients.
But if we're looking into the future, what's on the roadmap for managed security baseline service?
So our managed security baseline service is still pretty new, but it's growing really fast and we're getting a lot of traction with our customers. They love it that we literally guide them all year round through their security and their security improvements. And things can go really quick that way. So that's glad to see. In terms of the roadmap, we're expanding the scope. So more modules, deeper integrations, and smarter automation with Maester, Jira, and our Azure DevOps service. We're also working on better visualizations and reporting, so customers can see their security posture evolve over time. And we're doing this by integrating the findings of the MSB service with our customer portal of the collective. And in there, customers have an overview of all their services, findings, and MSB decisions.
Yeah, and not alone that, we're also trying to look at AI-driven insights. I know it's a high buzzword, but we're also putting some effort into that to help organizations cut through the noise. We already have built-in prioritization, but AI can help us recognize patterns and also prioritize on the fly for the customer specifically. Let's face it, most teams don't have the time or resources to fix everything at once. So prioritization is one of the priorities for ourselves as well.
I was already wondering how you guys were doing it. that explains a lot.
The goal is to make security not just stronger, but also actionable, manageable, and align with the business objectives such as compliance.
Where is the value proposition in this service?
So our goal is to get every customer onboarded onto our managed security baseline service. And to make that happen, we're really pushing on keeping pricing as accessible as possible. So in our current model, organizations aren't really paying for the scanning or the baseline updates that we do. Those are included, but they're really investing in the expert guidance, so meaningful conversations about their findings and how to effectively remediate them.
Okay, that seems like a reasonable first takeaway to me. But let's summarize some of the other key takeaways we have spoken about today. One of those is the security baselines are essential for consistency, for compliance, and of course for control.
100%.
Okay, I've written down another one for myself. The continuous assessment and drift monitoring help you stay secure in dynamic environments.
Yeah, definitely.
Then the managed security baseline from the collective simplifies this with automation, expert support, and tailored recommendations. And as a last key takeaway that we want to give to you guys is built on Meester, but enhanced with operational value, ticketing coach, and business context.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, that brings us to the end of today's episode. A big thank you to both of you, Thor and Jasper, for sharing your valuable insights. And of course, thank you all for tuning in. We hope you found today's discussion helpful. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and share this with your colleagues, helping us reach more people who are just as passionate about building a safer digital world. We'll be back next time with another important topic in corporate security. Until then, stay vigilant, stay secure, and let's keep working together to shape a safer future.